Hey, well, ciao everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm Peggy West. I'm the event organizer and happy to have everybody join us today. I don't ever think we have enough knowledge about our projects, and today we've got Benjamin Moore, a class that's addressing problems and solutions. At minimum, you'll have a better eye for what to look for in your projects for painting in particular, and Benjamin Moore being a national provider of paints and a manufacturer. So let's talk about some housekeeping before we get started. I want to tell the CAMs that are signing on or on already, please allow 1 to 2 weeks for Rudy and his team to get your credit posted. Got to upload them to the DBPR, and we do that amongst our other duties that we have. The other thing is I want to remind everybody to please use the Q&A, not the chat box, but put your questions into the Q&A box because we do record those. If we don't get to the questions, Rudy will probably answer those in a private email after the session. In the chat box will be our information from our sponsors. They usually put in their phone number, contact information, and so on. I also want to let you know we are recording this today, but if you want a copy of the slides, you're going to have to email Rudy, our speaker today, directly, and his information will be on the sponsor sheet. I do send out a sponsor sheet following all of the webinars, and it will have everybody's contact information. And with that, I'm going to start introducing our sponsors. Okay, first I want to start with Vinteum Software. This is my Wind Beneath My Wings. They are the provider of the required by law now websites if you have 25 units or more. But I also want to say a very special thank you to Julia, who seems to be very active in preparing this class. I want to turn this over to Laura. She's our international representative. Laura, tell us about yourself and the company. What's Vinteum doing?
Of course, thank you very much, Peggy. Hi, everybody. My name is Laura. I'm the sales executive here at Vinteum. So what do? We are basically a company that specializes on residential management. Basically, we help HOAs, we help condominiums, we help property management companies, property managers as well. We basically provide software and services to all of the ones that I just mentioned. So as Peggy said, we focus on helping communities with their websites, their residence portal, so they can communicate with their residents, organize their documents, even hold their meetings. We basically also help them with having an all-in-one platform, so it will definitely help you guys with making your job a lot easier as a self-managed community or even as a property manager to make sure that you have a great service and platform to communicate and help your residents and your board. So focusing on Florida, we do comply with all the 1021 House Bill laws. So if any of you guys is having a community with 25 or more units and if you need to make sure that this is, ready to go before January the 1st of 2026, you can definitely contact us. We not only provide all the services, but we also give training and onboarding to residents and board members. We have a really great personalized support. And yeah. So basically, if you want to get in touch with us, we will be sending you our information through the chat, and we can have a more personalized demo call with any of you who is interested. Not only that, but we're also having a great promotion this month. We're having a Black November. So if you want to not only, have these great services, but save a lot of money on your budget, this is a great opportunity to contact us, okay? Thank you.
Absolutely. And just to let you know, I listen. I want to put an emphasis also because elections are going to be coming in December and January. They offer electronic voting. So this is the full package, you guys. If you need a website, get on board with Laura. Okay, next I want to introduce a longtime sponsor, a great insurance broker in our area, COA Solutions. We've got Daniel Baum on. Daniel is the CEO and founder of COA Solutions of Florida. Daniel, tell us about yourself and what you're doing. You're always doing something.
Thank you, Peggy. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all again. Daniel Baum, COA Solutions of Florida. I like to say I specialize in helping communities save money on their property and casualty insurance. Always want to find the best possible coverage, always want to find the best possible price, never want to overpay for insurance that, to be honest, most of us don't even want to have. So, with that in mind, it's been a really terrific year for us, right? I mean, thank God we haven't had any major storms. Let's hope that we get out of the season exactly as we went into it and we've been through it. Carriers will continue to come into the market. That means competition. That means lower prices. Those are all great for all of us. So, yeah, I mean, what you should be doing now is we're coming towards the end of the year. There's a ton of renewals coming up for the end of December. I've been getting a lot of clients coming to me asking me to review their policies prior to year end to decide if there's opportunity to lower those premiums. I'm happy to do that. I do that without any cost. It's a courtesy that I do for customers. There's nothing to sign. And the other thing I've noticed is I've had some customers come to me and say, hey, look, my premiums are expiring during hurricane season, and hurricane season is almost over. Is it possible to cancel them once we get out of hurricane season and get lower premiums then? And the answer is it really depends on what month you renewed. Want to make sure you're not falling in the trap of what's called minimum earned and finding out you're not going to get money back. So just one more thing to look at. But the long story short, the goal is always to save you guys money, find you the best possible coverage at that lowest price. And that's what I like to do. So I thank you very much for having me and allowing me to speak to all of you. I wish you a wonderful class. I'm sure it's going to be a good one. And thank you. Have a great day.
Yes, thank you so much. All right. Next, I want to introduce Munyon Painting and Contractors. Today, we have very experienced representative Shawnee Haas. Shawnee, tell us about yourself and the company.
Hi everyone, I'm Shawnee. I'm the marketing manager at Munyon Painting. For over 70 years, we have proudly served communities across Florida with high quality interior and exterior painting for residential associations, high rises, and commercial properties. We really care about the long-term protection of your property and the curb appeal, and we love helping boards and managers keep their communities looking sharp and well cared for. Right now, we are offering free estimates. We know everybody is in budget season and planning for their next projects. So if you're interested in setting up a walkthrough of your property for maybe a project you're planning in 2026, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you scheduled. And thank you, Peggy, for putting these webinars together. They're always really fun and really knowledgeable.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm looking for a class from you guys soon, okay? All right. Next, I'm introducing everyone that's on today. Let's move down to Ruthie from Kaiser Air Conditioning, very experienced marketing rep. Ruthie, tell us about yourself and what's going on over there at Kaiser that you're doing for our associations.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, as always, Peggy, for what you do. I'm Ruthie. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Kaiser Air Conditioning, and we are locally owned and operated. We are not owned by private equity. So for 20 years, we have been serving Broward, Palm Beach, Martin, and St. Lucie counties, and experienced working with property managers. So if you're in those areas, I hope your antennas are going up. And if you have a resident on property that needs a recommendation and you send them our way, we do provide an incentive for that referral. Contact me directly and I'll make sure that those referrals get priority service personally. I will make sure from start to finish that they're taken care of. If you're in a condominium with a unit on the roof, we are able to service those larger commercial units. We can even develop a customized maintenance plan for those scenarios so that you don't have to worry about it at all during the course of the year, and we can budget as needed at the beginning of the year. So we're open every day, and as we get into the holiday season, I'm going to emphasize that every week. We have anywhere from 20 to 30 technicians out on the road at any given point. So we have the team and the resources to get to you the same day. So I'm your main point of contact. I'm going to drop my info. Don't hesitate to reach out to me for anything related to your HVAC systems, and hope you have a great rest of the week. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. All righty, you're welcome. So they are 24/7, 365. I don't know anybody else out there that can commit to that. So especially with the holidays coming, you got company in your house. You don't want to be in the heat in Florida, and it is hot in November here. So call Ruthie. All right, next I want to introduce, we've got Bob Aleka on. He's the Vice President for Associations for Faster IO. Bob, tell us about yourself and what you guys are doing lately for associations.
Well, thanks, Peggy, and good afternoon, all. Bob Aleka here with Faster IO. We provide streaming television and internet through our fiber optic infrastructure. We build it, maintain it, manage it. The beauty part about our streaming service is that it allows you to take it anywhere you go, including in the entire world, as we provide a VPN so that you get a Fort Lauderdale IP address, which allows you to take it anywhere you go. If you live in the United States and you leave Florida, you can change your address and you'll get the locals of your current zip code. And then when you come back, you change it back. Our internet speed is symmetrical, so whatever you get down, you get up. We have endless amount of speed we can provide. It's just whatever you're looking for. No property is too small for us. So if you're looking for to get some more information or maybe change your provider, please give me a call. I'll put my information in the chat, and enjoy the class. Thanks, Peggy.
Okay, great, great. All right. And just to let you know, I'm listening to you as well. Bob, he's very resourceful and very competitive. So I know him for a long time. So good luck to you, Bob, with this new season. All right, I do have several sponsors before I turn this over to our moderator for today, but I have some I want to mention because they are very involved in inviting you and participating as a sponsor. I'll start with City Quiet Windows and Doors. Ben Friedman is the president. He also is sometimes a moderator for me, but very active. He has 4 offices in Florida and very available as well. And these people, again, will be on the sponsor sheet. I have Best Roofing as a sponsor. Best Roofing is represented by Diana Olert and Cameron Andres. Diana has been around for a long time. I think she's got 8 years now into working for Best Roofing. And please reach out to them with your bids coming up at this time of the year. Next, I want to introduce Daniel Pena, the president for PD Concrete. He does concrete restoration jobs. Right now, he's on a $10 million job. He does the small jobs. He does the large jobs. Very qualified, in business over 20 years as well. Next, I want to introduce Hafer Company, Nicole Johnson. Mark Landez is also a partner with her. They are known for their 4 offices around the state for CPA services, not bookkeeping, CPA and auditing. So very qualified, in business for a while as well. First Citizens Bank is also a sponsor for us today. First Citizens Bank is got some outstanding loan interest rates available right now. We just had a presentation by them last week. So reach out to them if you're planning, at least get a price from them. It doesn't hurt. And you can do partial funding with them. You don't have to put all of your items in their bank, but they will help you with some great loans. Next, I want to introduce Velocity Services Group. They are a restoration and large loss rehab construction, minor construction. But Velocity is based out of Texas, but they do cover all of Florida. They have a couple of offices in Florida now, one over in the West Coast, and they are putting a satellite office in the East Coast. Reach out to them. The next one is the Paving Lady. Paving Lady is owned by Mauro Camuzzi. The representative in this area is Dawn Miller. They will come out and do a property assessment for you. They will negotiate with you, and they will provide you an outstanding service. Very well known in this area for over 35 years. I will mention I do have a new website available myself. Again, Peggy West. I have Florida Condo Vendors for You. I'm trying to connect my sponsors and vendors in this area with the property managers and board members at this time of bidding. And also I'm trying to connect CAM members out there. If you're interested in finding a new position or your associations are looking for a new management company, I'm adding new people each week. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Siobhan Gonzalez. Siobhan is the representative for United Professional Engineering. I'll let her tell her about herself and the company, and she is today's moderator. So Siobhan, take it away.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Siobhan Gonzalez. I am the business developer for United Professional Engineering. We are a full-service structural engineering firm serving South Florida and condominiums for over 20 years. Set apart, we are led by our president and owner, Carmelo Giglio, who is the standing president of the Florida Structural Engineer Association. He also played a significant role in the Surfside Working Group, helping write the new legislation to prevent tragedies like that from happening in the future. So I share that to say that we offer engineering services, extremely competitive with our pricing, and we want to be that resource for you. There are so many questions around engineering, when to call an engineer, what do you need? So there's no question too small or too big, no project that we can't take a look at and help you with. We are offering all of you here a complimentary consultation. So reach out to me directly for that. And I'm excited for today's CEU course with Rudy. It's going to be wonderful. So how this is going to go today, it's very important, as Peggy already mentioned, to please put your questions in the Q&A box. If you have an important question that you want answered, Rudy's going to get to them at the end of the presentation. And whatever he doesn't get to, he'll reach out to you. Right, Rudy? That's what
Yes, I will. Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, Q&A are for your questions. The chat has all the information for our sponsors. And without further ado, Rudy, let's hear about you and what we're going to get into today.
All right. Thank you very much, Peggy. The whole team, thank you very much for having me do this presentation today. I appreciate it. We have a nice crowd, and I appreciate that as well. So I'm Rudy Forjan. I have been with Benjamin Moore Paints for 36 years here in the South Florida market. I've been around paint for since I was for the last 50 years. I'm not going to say the age yet, but I've been around in the paint business for 50 years. So I know a couple things about paint and a lot of experience, basically pretty much just all down here in South Florida from Key West all the way up to Vero Beach. So I cover pretty much anything you need. With Benjamin Moore, I work with Regal Paints, and essentially what we try to do is we work a lot with boards, property managers, creating a, we do the paint system for them. If you're going to be painting your project, we have a whole kind of process that we go through that we can help assist you with painting projects. And we work with our Carmelo at United, and we work with the other contractors, with PD and with Munyon that you heard of before. But our main focus is to help you as an association, as a property manager or board member, to step through the painting process. And we do on-site inspections. We do color consultations. If you're changing colors, we'll do, the color renderings. Pretty much everything that you need to do on-site inspections as the project goes on. So we don't charge for any of this. The cost is bared by the contractor who's buying the paint, but it's just part of the service that we offer, because we offer warranties, and we want to make sure that if we offer an 8 or 10-year warranty, that we're not going to get calls other than, "Hey, Rudy, how about doing our building the next time because you did such a great job the last time?" So we try to be that resource. So in lieu of that, I'm going to go ahead and bring up my presentation now, and there we go. Okay, dope. Okay, and the presentation, I call it Paint 201. But essentially what it is, if I've kind of adapted it to the South Florida market, and the whole idea behind it is I want to be able to, if you understand the paint and the issues that we're dealing with paint, you're able to know what kind of information is being given to you when you're looking for paint work, so that you know that you can start to qualify contractors and paint people if they really know what they're doing or not they're doing. So that way you can work with people that you're going to be able to spend your money wisely with. So that's kind of the whole idea behind this idea itself. But we're going to be looking at paint itself and some of the issues that we deal in South Florida with paint, some of the practical aspects about paint, and then also any problem-solving techniques. A few of them, especially those that are pertaining to the South Florida market. So I do plan to be out of here by about 5:30, 6 o'clock tonight. Siobhan, is that okay with you? Are we good with that? Yeah. So, but what we'll try to do is get it through. Like Siobhan said, put any Q&A questions in your Q&A, so that way we could get through the information, and we'll have time for questions and answers afterwards. But if I can't, please, I'll be more than happy to get back in touch with you. You can email me at any time and so forth. Presentation as well, and make those property managers out there with that make sure your CAM numbers is correctly down there, so we could get it to you down the right way the first time. So, all right, and away we go. This is the private provider course and so forth, but you'll have all that information as we send it to you. Essentially, what we're trying to do, what we're going to go through here is, I'm going to get pretty simple. I want you to understand the classifications of paints. I want you to be able to understand that. I want you to some of the factors that occurred during curing that will affect curing, and we'll get a little bit into that. And why is that important? We live in South Florida. We have a lot of humidity, a lot of rain. That affects a lot of the way that the coating performs and dries. And if we don't do that, if it doesn't happen the right way, you could have a catastrophe or major failures on your hands. So we want to be able to understand that. Surface prep, can't emphasize enough about surface preparation, how important that is, along with the proper primer and techniques. And then we're going to go over at the end some of the real common paint solutions, issues that you run into down in South Florida, and try to how to get around it, how to avoid it. But again, the whole idea when we get out of this class is that I really want you to if you have a better understanding of paint, you're going to have a better understanding when someone is telling you what to do with paint and how to use paint and where to use the certain types of paint. And you'll be a wiser consumer, and you're going to spend your funds a lot smarter that way. So essentially what we try to talk about, what we first start when you're classifying paints are classified by the resin type. So in other words, when you talk about a paint, everybody's heard about latex paint, epoxies, alkyd paints, and so forth. What they're referring to is that, paint itself is basically three components. It's a pigment, it's a glue, which is called the resin, and then it's the solvent that we use to mix everything together. And that resin type is usually what paint is called by. So latex paint means that you have a latex resin in that particular paint and all the characteristics that go with it itself. Most of the time, what we're running into, as working in HOAs and condominiums and where we're dealing with generally mostly oil and latex paints. And to be honest with you, right now, oil-based paints, due to the environmental concerns over the last few years, is becoming less and less of a factor. When you start getting into some of the commercial applications or special applications, where you need certain kind of characteristics or protection, then you start getting into some of the other type of coatings itself, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, the whole thing I emphasized, and the whole idea about these classes, whatever class you take, is knowledge. Knowledge is going to help you prevent problems. Knowledge is going to be able to make you wiser decisions and wiser choices, not only in who you and what you choose and what product you choose, but the people that you work with. So you'll be able to understand that as well. So that's the whole thing of what we're trying to get accomplished here. So again, what we talked about, classifying paint, you classify it by the type of resin or the curing mechanism. Sometimes, and we'll get into that, sometimes the curing mechanism, how a coating cures, is the way that you could refer to a coating itself, but we'll run into that a little bit. Resin itself, it's going to be able to give you the The main purpose of the product is to cause the adhesion to the substrate that you're painting itself. However, resin also is going to contribute to the performance of the coating. The pigment part is just color, the color that you see. But if you need a scrubbable surface, if you need any kind of a surface that's going to be chemical resistant or sun resist or resistant to the rays of the sun, the resin that you're using is going to be able to help that product perform and do what it wants you to do. Curing method influences the drying time. Each resin type has a different type of curing process to it, which will affect the drying time of the coating itself. And living in South Florida with as much rain, especially if you're working outside and even inside, the humidity levels that we're dealing with down here in South Florida are generally very high. You'll find that you'll be hard pressed to find the humidity levels that we're dealing with in any part of the country. And that's something that you really have to understand and know when you're using the certain types of paint. So again, just as a clarification, oils and alkyds are resins types, latex, acrylics. A lot of people hear, oh, we have 100% acrylics. And 100% acrylic is just a type of resin. And so there's different types of latex resin, so vinyl latex and so forth. Generally, what we're going to run into a lot is going to be acrylics and different type of acrylic resins. And there's different qualities of acrylic resins as well. Epoxies also determine the kind of paint that you're dealing with. So epoxies are, again, a certain type of resin. They have certain performance characteristics, and they have some issues that you have to deal with and you have to be aware of. And then some of the other coatings that you'll probably deal with in your communities, and to a much lesser degree, there will be urethanes, and there's all kinds of urethanes, like polyurethanes, just all different kinds of polyspartic urethanes, and all kinds of different kind of coatings like that. But these are general for, and these are a lot more type of coatings that are out there available. All right, so curing mechanism. So when you start getting into you thinking about the kind of coating that you're getting into, you're going to be using, your first thing is going to be the curing mechanism. And what curing is, of course, is when that coating is going to achieve the peak of its performance characteristic itself. So solvent evaporation generally is what occurs with curing. That's basically the salt. The third part of the part that I told you about paints, the third part, the solvent, generally that evaporates into the air. And that is where we have issues with a lot of the government controlling the amount of solvents or what's being let out into the air when you're using a can of paint. Different areas of the country, like California, you're only allowed to use a certain amount of oil-based paints. In fact, oil-based paints are only sold in quart containers in California, not in gallon containers or 5-gallon containers because of the amount of solvent. That kind of issue, or the EPA is not throughout the entire country, but you'll have pockets of different areas of the country where the pollution has been a problem, where they try to get a little bit more stringent with it. So, but that's what a solvent evaporation is, and just the solvent escaping from the can itself. Now we're going to talk about two different other curing mechanisms that also is part of the solvent evaporation when you work with paints. When you're working with latex paints or latex acrylics, and latex acrylics are generally oil-based, are generally water-based or waterborne coatings itself, they go the coating itself to get to the process of being a coat of paint that you're going to work with on your walls is a process called coalescence. And coalescence is essentially just the pigment and the binder fusing together to be able to hold that pigment together and to give you the characteristics that you need. For instance, when you're painting the inside of your wall on your home and you see a little bit of shine, you get a little bit of a mark on, you want to scrub. That particular resin gives you the ability, but the process to get from the liquid form to what you see on the wall is called the coalescence. Now, with oil-based paints, there is something called oxidation. And oxidation basically is that the binder itself reacts with the oxygen in the air, and that process helps it cure, helps that particular finish the cure itself out to where it's going to the hardness it's going to achieve. Oxidation, any type of alkyd coating that uses oxidation as a curing mechanism generally will that oxidation, that curing method never really stops. That's why a oil-based coating, if you're using it, and one of the reasons it's not being used as much, especially in South Florida, is that it will actually continue to oxidize and become so brittle that the coating itself will snap and lose any kind of flexibility to itself. So that's something that you have to kind of keep in consideration. So let's talk a little bit now about drying versus curing. They're two different things. Drying is essentially when the solvent escapes from the coating itself, from the coating itself. For instance, latex paints or latex acrylics and so forth, they're usually dry to touch within 30 minutes. A lot of times, a lot sooner than that, where they will dry. Curing, though, is when that coating has reached its optimum hardness. So that's a completely different system than just drying. So the drying on latex paints, like I said, will take probably about under 30 minutes, sometimes a little bit less. However, the curing process on a latex coating, a latex resin, could take you in South Florida with the amount of humidity and the temperature that we have, could take up to 120 days for that coating to achieve the optimum hardness you expect it to be. And that's not an exaggeration. That's what happens. That's why you see a lot of cans where it says, don't clean, when you're on the interior, don't scrub your walls for 30 days after application of the coating, because they were trying to give you the opportunity for that coating to cure so that you don't scrub and clean and knock off the paint itself. So that's something that you have to understand with it. Now, on the other part of it, oil-based paints generally take a long time for it to dry because they got a solvent. They could take up to 4 hours or even longer to dry. There's some what we call long oil resins that could take 24 hours to dry. They're not too popular in South Florida anymore. However, their curing process generally is a much shorter window. As much as it could be anywhere from 5 to 7 days, where it will reach the cure, the kind of the hardness the optimum hardness that coating is supposed to receive. So there's the different type of process. This kind of concept is real important when you're talking about what kind of paint you're using, where you're going to use it, and you have to understand when you recommend a paint. When we go out to recommend a paint, we have to take into account all the different aspects of what you're going to try to do, when you're going to return to service, what's the purpose of the coating itself, and why you're going to have it there. So we have to start kind of putting in our minds what that's going to be, and also the time of the year, the applications, and so forth. So one of the other things that affects the curing, and these are some of the other factors that we put in when we're trying to recommend the right kind of paint, is that temperature will affect the curing process. Believe it or not, if it's too hot, it really doesn't. It doesn't really speed up the process of the coating of the curing of latex paints. Generally, when you have high temperatures in South Florida, it means a lot of moisture in the air, so that coating slows down and that coating will slow down in the curing process itself. Air movement will also help. If you have no air movement, it can stagnate how some of those coatings dry and cure. But at the same time, too much air movement will affect how that coating is going to work for you. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Relative humidity is essentially the amount of water that's in the air. A high humidity, if the solvent is escaping from the can of paint and the air is saturated with a lot of water, a lot of moisture, there's no place for that solvent to go into the air with. So that's why high humidity slows down the coatings, because that solvent has nowhere to go. So it stays in place. And dew point essentially is where the temperatures meet, the humidity level and the temperature meets together and forms condensation. In South Florida, we usually get that during right now in the mornings when you come out in the car and you have a lot of dew on the outside of your car or your windows of your house and so forth. That's generally where the temperature and the humidity level met. And that is, you don't want to have a certain amount of, just because you see the car with humidity doesn't mean everything on the outside is not affected by that same dew. and that will affect how the coating performs. So you have to be careful about that. High temperatures and low temperatures are going to affect the viscosity as well, the thickness of the coating itself, and the bonding. Because if it's too low of a temperature, especially with acrylics, what happens, the paint gets a little bit too thick, and then that coalescence process that I was talking about with latex resins will not coalesce and form that plastic film that what latex paint is, and it will affect the bonding of the primer. So you have to be careful about that. The air movement that we talked about before, if you have too much air movement outside, the coating tends to dry faster. And all these coatings that are made by all manufacturers, we design them to have a certain amount of dry time. And what we do that for is so that they could flow out, do something we call flow out, or when you brush or when you roll, that or even if you're going to spray, they have a certain amount of time for that coating to stay wet before it dries. And that brush marks and roller marks will tend to float out and smooth out a little bit. So those are things, but too much dry time will allow that too much air movement could affect that process. So you see more brush marks and so forth when you're spraying, especially with oil-based paints, and I've seen it with latex as well. If it's drying too much air movement, it could a lot of times you get these like little bubbles appearing, and those tend to float out. But if they dry too fast, then you get these little bubbles that look like craters, like craters of the moon on your coating, and that's generally because the coating is drying too fast. So you have to be kind of, again, keep in mind about that. High humidity can shift the colors and oils. I'm not going to talk about that because we don't use a lot of oil-based paints anymore. But high humidity can affect latex, and we talked a little bit about where that happens. But dew point, you don't want to paint a paint on the outside and you have some dew land on that coating, especially if you don't give it the time for it to cure properly. This usually happens when you're going with, say, a dark color outside, generally with a latex paint, where if you get a certain amount of water getting or that dew getting on the substrate itself, you can cause some discoloration of the paint. And a lot of times we get something called surfactant leaching, where essentially if you get water on the walls and the outside, the surfactants or the soaps that we use in paint itself will come to the surface. And you'll see it more with a flat latex paint that you're using, where you'll see almost like it looks like somebody sprayed oil on the outside of a wall, and you see little drips of oil coming down. And it says that it's water based because but it looks like oil, but it can cause that shine to that the kind of those flat surfaces to look like the wall is shining. I always get it described as like the walls are crying paint. There's something wrong with my paint, but generally all that will disappear itself. So those are some of the factors. Those are some of the issues that we deal with preparation. With the curing and the drying process. So now let's talk about preparation. Again, another really important part. Preparation is vital. It is the key to any paint job that you're going to do. No matter how small or how large, preparation is the key. If you don't prepare right, if you don't prepare in the manner that needs to be done, you could use the best coating possible with the poorest preparation that will be bested by a job that's done prepared properly and using a cheap coating. The ideal way that we want to try to achieve this, of course, is to get the best preparation with the best coating to achieve the job that you're looking for to get like that. So it's really important. I cannot emphasize enough how important preparation is, and to follow the guidelines recommended by the manufacturer, by the label, and not to shortcut. I deal with, in the few years that I've been in the paint business, every time I get to have when I see a problem for paint, it's generally two things. Paint is not hard to make. It's very easy. Paint's been around for a long time, and so paint is very well understood. A lot of manufacturers, there's no secrets in the paint business. So paints generally don't fail. Do they once in a while? And I'm not saying as a paint salesman that our paints never go wrong, but they do fail. But 80 to 90% of the paint complaints that I get are related, number one, to either substrate or to application, substrates itself, or the preparation that's needed to get that coating to perform right. And if the coat paint has no brain to it, it's going to touch and adhere to the first thing it touches. And if that surface is not prepped right and that or beyond the capability of that coating to adhere to, you're going to have a failure. So that's something that you have to be able to do. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Preparation and priming. The priming as well is important. You hear a lot in the paint world of there's paint in the primer. Honestly, that was put together, and all manufacturers, including my company, we put paint and primer on the label itself. There is no such thing. The materials used in primers are the same materials used in paint. The resins are a little bit different, and the quantities are a little bit different to be able to make that coating act and behave in a certain way. The company that put this out, that started the paint and primer thing, is actually the biggest primer company in the world. And they did this just to give the impression that if a paint has a primer in it, it's going to cover better and it's going to be adhere better. But the reality is that you do, even with all that, you need to have the appropriate primer, the appropriate prep and primer to be able to get that coating to be able to work for you. Metal and wood, metal and wood generally take much more intense preparation than masonry walls, and that's due to the nature of the substrate that you're dealing with. Wood and metal, they're not as stable as masonry surfaces, so wood moves around a lot. Wood changes. Wood, as soon as you cut a piece of wood, it's going to be in a state to get back to this natural to where it's natural at. Metal does the same thing, but metal expands and contracts, but it's a lot harder, and the paints are used a little bit different. So the preparation and the application when you're painting on wood and metal are generally very different, and has to be paid attention to a little bit more. And you'll find too that this is one of the reasons why when you're looking at warranties from paint manufacturers, especially outside, they're not going to issue warranties for wood or metal. They're going to issue warranties only on the vertical on masonry surfaces, not on the other surfaces. So if you don't believe that, read the warranties that you get, and you'll see exactly what that is the truth. Most people don't read warranties, and those aren't covered like that. There are cases where there will be, but the application and the type of coating you use and the preparation that you use is generally going to be much more intense. It's going to raise the cost of the job itself. And a lot of times it's really not worth the extra effort, and especially in South Florida with all the rain and humidity and everything that we get. So when you're painting wood, and again, you'll see the siding that we have on that slide over here. Don't have much of that down here in South Florida, thank God. I did have one community that had that cedar shakes siding in Jupiter, and they had now changed that back to a metal mansard siding, and a lot easier to take care of. They were having to repaint that, to restain that generally in every 2 to 3 years, because it just did not hold up. So it was very expensive to be able to do that. But when you're painting wood, essentially what you want to try to do, you got to make sure it's dry, that the surface is dry. And again, you'll be hearing this a lot when I get through this preparation part. Water is our enemy. In South Florida, water is the enemy of your buildings, of your substrates, of everything you're painting. So you got to be, when you're painting something, you got to make sure that surface is clean and it's dry. And that's the whole purpose. And that clean and dry is pretty much what you want to try to do on every substrate. But on wood, it's especially so, because it's just the substrate itself. Any kind of holes and cracks should be filled. And then the type of wood is going to affect the painting process as well. So there's some woods that are softer and harder. I could spend all day on this. That's why, if you want, we'll go to 6 o'clock and then we'll keep going through the different types of wood. But the types of woods will affect the painting process. So understand the types of wood that you're painting will affect the kind of primers that you're going to use, the type of preparation that you're going to use, and the type of top coats that you're going to use that's going to hold the best for you. Staining wood doesn't happen a whole lot anymore down in South Florida, because stained wood just doesn't hold up. That cedar shake siding I was talking about, they were staining it, and that's why they were getting 2 or 3 years was really stretching it. They were really needed to do it every year. So, but essentially staining is, just putting on a material that's going to color the wood itself. A lot of people, when they had stained decks or were using stained decks, understand that if the deck has stain on it, and some areas are bare and some areas already have stain on it, the stain that you put on top of all those areas will look different. It's transparent and it's going to show through. Yes, Peggy?
I just wanted to
Yeah.
interject just from experience. I was in the pest industry for about 10 years. Those cedar shake shingles are also bad for insects, and if they rot out, eventually rats and rodents, it can be a big issue. So they now make those actually, I believe, in a concrete form. They look like cedar sticks, but they're not. So
Yeah, yeah, no, and the metal siding that this community used up there actually looks very nice. It's very modern looking. It gives an updated appearance to it too as well. So we'll talk about that. But the staining itself, just again, just the staining and restaining. We're talking about it. If it's already been previously stained, you really have to get it down to the bare substrate, to the clean wood for that stained color to show through. Again, stain is transparent. It will show through any of the colors that's underneath it. For instance, if you take that door, you put underneath it a brand new piece of door and use the same stain, it's going to come out like two different colors because the age and the porosity of the wood is going to affect how that stain appears. Okay, clear finish is usually used on the outside. Down in South Florida, due to the amount of UV that we have, is generally not a smart thing to do anymore on wood. It does require quite a bit of changeover and changing itself. But there are different kind of coatings that you could use on there that will last a little bit longer. But again, the more the better quality of the coating, the more expensive it's going to get. All right, masonry surfaces. We don't do any of this down here, right? There's nothing down here in South Florida for masonry surfaces. So let's talk about two types, or not two types, but two versions of painting masonry. A lot of us are doing repairs on our building. United does work where they're gonna be talking about doing all the work. We're gonna have to open up concrete buildings and so forth like that. So and to patch areas, fix concrete. The contractors, PD and Munyon both do that. So what they're looking at is, when you're painting a bare concrete surface or a brand new concrete surface, you really have to consider the porosity of that surface when you're painting, and the pH. pH is pretty basic. It's just the alkalinity, the alkaline that is inherent in all concrete that's being used everywhere. It's just not in South Florida thing. It's just the way that it is. And a certain amount of a high level of pH will affect the coating itself. A lot of this is going to come back to, remember I said water is your enemy? Well, we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Water is your enemy in there, because when you paint a masonry surface, if it's just applied, it still has a lot of water in it. That alkali is being brought to the surface because the salts, when water is in that concrete, those alkali, or what we call it, those salts, are solubilized. Just like when you pour salt into a glass of water, it all solubilizes, you don't see it. However, when that moisture comes out of that substrate, that salt will crystallize, like it will if you let that happen in the glass itself, it will crystallize. Now, what happens is when you put paint on top of something like that, all latex paints will allow moisture to come through, but those salts will deposit behind the coating itself, because it's not the permeability or the breathability of the latex paint will not allow those crystalline salts to pass through. So they will collect behind the coating itself, and that will affect that's what we call hot masonry. And that alkali, if it's laid up against the resin, the latex resin, or pretty much just any kind of paint that you use, will burn that resin. It will make that resin fall apart. And if the resin is the glue of the paint, guess what happens? It starts to powder up the paint. And a lot of times you'll see this in new construction where you'll see a nice color, and then you'll see these white areas or white spots occurring. And that's where the alkali, the alkali itself and the concrete has burned the paint to cause that chalk. Because if you take away the resin from pigment, when you're going to get pigment is like talcum powder, that's what you're getting. So that's what you're seeing that on there like that. Before I talk to the next part, a lot of times too, when I say water is the enemy, you paint a substrate that's brand new and everything like that. But if water gets back into the building through, around windows or so forth like that, that alkali in the concrete will be reactivated. So you could be having this issue start all over again, especially when you start painting. Like it's going to act like it's a brand new house again, and you can't have failure of the paint because that resin is getting behind it. So those are some of the things you have to take care of. Now, when we're dealing with a lot of these buildings that that are being patched and so forth like that, a lot of times, first of all, it's very difficult to match the patch to what's existing there. Second, and that difference in texture is going to make the way that we see the color different. It's going to make it look different. So you have to be a little bit aware of that. Also, the porosity of those areas compared to something that's painted to something that's brand new will affect the way that the coating appears and the way the color and the coating sees. So that's why a lot of times, when you're seeing when you're using paint on the outside, we look at the sheen level because we want to be careful that the sheen level is where we need it to be at. And if you have a difference in texture and a different of the way that the material soaks into those patch areas, it will show the color look. It will allow the color to look different, and it will affect the way that you see the color. It'll look like it's a different color when it isn't, and it will help those patch areas kind of be more noticeable. So that's why in a lot of these jobs that we're using now, flat latex paints are the ones that are being recommended. Painting metal is essentially, again, it's a harder substrate. There's different types of metals that are available. For instance, you hear galvanized metal. Galvanized metal is really just cheap metal with a galvanic coating on top of it to protect that ferrous metal that's underneath it itself. It's really just like a paint. So you have to make sure. But when they're manufacturing galvanized metal, they use manufacturing oils, and those oils will adhere to the substrate. So when you're painting metal, first of all, with brand new galvanized metal, you have to clean those oils off. If not, you get what you're seeing there, where the paint will not stick to it and it'll pop right off. Oil-based paints will not adhere to galvanized because the galvanic coating itself will react with the oil-based resins and allow that to do the same thing and not adhere itself to it. But again, when you're talking about metal, the types of paint that are generally used on metal are usually different than what's used on the wall. So they're usually a little bit harder surfaces. So you really have to do a little bit better prep and a little bit better understanding. Metal is not porous, so it requires a lot more preparation to be able to get that. Rust is a big issue with metal itself. Metal is just generally a metal oxide, iron oxide, and as soon as it forms into metal through heat and fire, that metal wants to go back to its original form. And the way that it does that is by metal rusting. In South Florida, with the moisture and the temperatures that we have, coatings move. The metal will move, cause openings, and that's why you have water getting to the substrate, especially if you're along the ocean. You get the salt acts as a conductor, and it will cause that electrolysis, or what happens in metal, to cause that metal to rust. So it's a big issue and something that you have to take care of and understand as you're working through. And in South Florida, it's a real problem. So again, I could talk on it all day, but again, there's just a lot of work we have to do. Finish coats, again, talk a little bit about color here. People usually paint because they want to get color. They want to change the color in the building, want to change the color of your room and so forth. Color does set mood. A lot of times it's used for safety. The sheen level is a big issue that you have to think about when you're using paint itself. But my old standby when I'm talking about paint is that the reason you paint is that you want to protect the substrate that you're painting. That's really what it's for. Imagine a world where you don't have no paint on the surface. I was born in Cuba, came here when I was a little boy, and I see pictures of what downtown Cuba looks like, and through pictures, I've never been back. it is pretty horrific what happens to buildings when you don't paint and protect, because all these substrates are made to receive a coat of paint so you can give you a certain amount of protection. So this is a topic that I'm going to just kind of breeze through because I could be here forever. There's degrees, there's designers that take 4 years of college to be able to understand color and what it essentially is. Color, of course, is the driving factor when you're picking paint. There's a psychology to color itself, and understanding that color is really important. When you're looking at color itself, when I say we have something on this as consider the sun's temperature, when we see color, the colors that you're seeing on the board there, those are all the colors that are inherent in white light. When we see white light, that's essentially all those colors being mixed together, and that forms the white. When we see different type of colors, the pigments that are being used in there absorb all the other pigments except for the color that you want to see. For instance, if I want a yellow, the pigment that we put in there, that yellow pigment will absorb all the other type of shades of color in white light. So as the white light hits that surface, it will reflect back. It will absorb those rays of light and will make that color look yellow. Now, at the same time, that's why, for instance, during the day, at different times of the day, you will see the same color applied on the wall look differently. Why? Because the color of the sun changes as it goes throughout the day. So if you had shining a white light on a yellow, it will absorb all that. It might look like a pretty yellow. However, if you have an amber light or a setting sun that is going to be a little bit more golden, it will look different. So that's why you have to kind of take a look and understand the sun's temperature. As you're seeing that, same thing applies to amber light in a room to the white lights that are being used real popular now. Deeper colors, all colors will fade outside. So whatever color you use outside, the darker the color, the more it's going to fade. Fading is not part of anybody's warranty, and everything outside fades. So imagine leaving your car parked in a black car, parked in the same spot for 10 years without washing it, without cleaning it like we do most homes, and what's going to happen to that? So it's going to look differently. You know what it'll do that. So, and then all these colors have an undertone. If you look at a yellow or green, they either have an undertone that's going to send it towards a little bit of a yellowish green or an undergreen. It kind of matches the colors next to it. Always put like a gray swatch behind the color to help you to distinguish the undertone of a color that you have. It makes it real important. This is how you choose colors. It's a color scheme. This is really starting to get into color schemes. Best thing I could do, if you are good with color, you'll naturally come to it. If not, go to a decorator and they will help you out and be able to understand how color is going to affect your room and how this color is going to work with you and so forth. Or I could actually call me and I could talk to you a little bit about color so you can figure it out. It's a science. There's a lot to color. I'm kind of floored every time I talk about color, but how much how we see color. Even the way that we see color as we age is different, because our lenses, as an old guy like me, I don't see the colors the same way that I did when I was 20 years old, or someone as young as Siobhan, who see colors a little bit more without that amber tone to it, will affect the way that you see color. And that's actually something that is very true, and something that does happen itself. Sheen is a big deal. The sheen level, basically the way that you make a paint shinier versus flat, is that you add a little bit more of that resin to it. The more the resin, the lower amount of pigment that you get, the shinier that surface is going to be. There's pluses and minuses for each of these things that you go with. The sheen is going to affect how the coating is going to hold up for you, scrubbability and so forth. But however, as well, sheen is going to affect the light reflection that you see off that surface. So a surface itself that will affect a shinier surface, you'll see more of the defects in that surface. While a flat surface with a flat paint, you'll see less of the defects of that purpose. But then again, if you need a real scrubbable, clean finish, a shinier finish is easier to clean than a flat. So those are the things that you kind of have to weigh to figure out what's going to be able to do that. You'll see on most of these projects that we're working with outside, a lot of times we were going with, I know when I first started doing this, it was using a lot of the sheen paint outside because it cleans better and it actually holds up better. However, we've seen a lot of the times where the patches are on those concrete walls, that color looks like it was touched up with a different color, and it then highlights the texture. So pretty much now most manufacturers are all recommending flat outside because again, color is more about what we see, not about the the durability, the what it does to the surface itself. So flats are being used more outside because it's very difficult to spend $1 million on a building and then it looks like the patchwork just pops out when you're using sheen paint. So that's where something that you have to go through. Again, this just talks a little bit about what we talked about. The shinier, the better durability. But again, the more it's going to show the imperfections, and especially, and you want to see this on a ceiling, on a flat ceiling. We have all the flat ceilings on the wall. If the subtle differences, if you're painting a ceiling and you using a regular wall paint, and all paints have a certain amount of degree to sheen to it, you could actually see if the sun is coming in right, you could actually see the roller marks on the wall due to the differences in the way that the paint is applied. That's why there's such things as ceiling paints that are dead flat, so that it has zero type of reflection, because all paints will have, even flat latex paints have a certain amount of reflection. And the way that we all know this to prove it, at night, could you ever see color or could you ever see sheen if there's no light shining on it? That's because light is the way we see these things. So that's why it's all kind of the process that we're using when we're picking up paint. You need that, the light is really what helps us see color, and the light is what helps us see the sheen and the reflection on there. If we could all live in a dark world and without light, then we wouldn't have to worry about, we have one kind of paint, make it easy. But and then I'm getting too science fiction here for you. So I'm getting my nerdy shoes on there. Residential, finish coats, residential, again, for paint itself, the number one function in my book is about protection. And whatever substrate that whatever you're painting itself, and residential, of course, it's going to give us color, but always think about paint for protection. It doesn't mean you have to use the most expensive paint every time, but use the right paint and the best quality that's going to give you what you're expecting with all the things that you're putting together with paint itself. Interior paints, there's new paints that are scuff resistant, that will resist scuffs. There's paints that are washable and so forth. So you have to be able to do that. And then the exterior paint gives you protection to different substrates and so forth. Commercial protection, really the difference that we're looking at here is that a lot of times you work in environments that are going to have that you're going to need chemical resistance, or that you're going to be walking on a floor with chemical resistance and so forth. You're going to live in an environment where you're not going to be able to clean the walls as much. So you have to be able to judge and use those different type of resin coatings to be able to match what you're going to need in that commercial protection. And then specialty protection, it's really about, like for instance, the kind of paint that's used on cars is a different kind of paint that's used on homes and on doors. Why? Because the car, it's going to be a little bit harder to apply. You get a lot more sun on the car. It's always moving. You're getting things moving. So you need a different type of coating on there. So this, in coatings, the science of paint itself is really very minuscule. It's very unique. It kind of, you could make a coating do a specific function that you need the coating to do. That's why there's not one coating that works for everything, because every circumstance is a little bit different, and manufacturers and specialty manufacturers have actually manufactured coatings to be able to make it a little bit different, and to make these coatings to be able to match those particular instances itself. So let's move to problem solving. When you're looking at problem solving, it's a science. People, when I go out to see a complaint, trust me, this is not about personality or personal preferences. There's paint's a chemical. If it fails, there's a reason why that chemical is failing. My job is to try to figure out why that paint fails, and why it's happening. 80 to 90% of all paint complaints are generally substrate related and application or preparation related. So, but these are the four questions that I always ask myself. Where it is, the one thing I always like to say, when you're having a paint complaint, the first thing I look for is what is the complaint? What's happening? Is it peeling? Is it chalking and so forth? And the consistency of that product. If you have a building where it's fading on one wall, but on the rest of the surfaces, it's not fading, that's not a problem generally of the paint itself. Paint's a chemical. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail the same way on every substrate, if it's peeling or anything like that. So that's why, paint generally reacts to the substrate that is painted. So that's what you generally look at when I'm looking at complaints itself. So let's run some into the specific things. Water is the enemy. Again, the whole idea, what Siobhan does and painting contractors do with paint, we need to keep water out of the buildings as much as possible. Waterproofing a building is almost next to impossible. The way construction materials move in South Florida, the way that building moves, you don't see it, but buildings move. The materials that are being used on the building get older, they get a little bit harder, so they crack and they open up. Water gets into the building, and that's what causes. And that what causes a lot of issue. Water travels when it's inside the building, the path of least resistance. So, and that water could cause all kinds of problems with it. So that's why you need someone, if you're doing a big building, use an engineer that could tell you to help you identify these kind of areas. And even then, it's not 100% that they're going to be able to find the issue because there's so many things that are going on there. But we need to do everything when you're painting your building or painting any substrate, is to make sure that that you understand water is your enemy, and you're going to try to do everything to get water from keeping into that substrate itself. When you see chalking itself, remember I said something about the fact that the paint is in three parts. The paints that are left on the part that's left of the solvent is evaporates into the wall. What's left on the surface is going to be the pigment, which gives you the color, and the resin, which is going to glue everything together. When you see that, what's on that guy's hand is the pigment, the resin starting to fall apart. And that resin will release that powder, and then when you rub your hand on it, so it does that. Why do paints chalk? A lot of it is due to poor application. A lot of it could be due to a substrate that is very porous, that soaks in all the water itself. It could be just cheap paint. It could be a number of things that you have to be able to do on there. So generally, when you see something like that, when somebody asks me, when do I need to repaint? First thing I look for is that. If there's how much chalk is on the surface. If you have a lot of chalk on the surface, repaint your buildings and repaint your areas right away. Because what happens is that when I'm repainting, we're adhering to the paint that's already on there. Yeah, we pressure clean. Yes, we use a sealer. But if you have that kind of chalk occurring on the surface, that means think of each coat of paint as the link in the chain. And if that weakens, that link, that chain, or you put paint on top of it, will cause failure. And that's where it goes back to the substrate itself. And if the paint is peeling on the outside, first thing you do is turn it around. And if it's a different color on one side than the other, then that tells you that it's not the last coat of paint that you applied on there, but previous coats of paint that are coming off there. It's science. And also the thickness of the coating itself. So again, that's an indication. How do you solve that problem? Essentially just trying to repaint before that your building gets to that problem itself. Touching up is something that, especially outside, colors will fade, colors will change, the sheen level will change on the outside itself. Touching up is a very difficult thing to be able to do. If you've got a multi-million-dollar home, or you got even my own personal home, it's not just a little four walls on the wall. When I touch up, I don't want to see down the hallway where I touch up with paint. It just looks bad. So the best way to do it, and you could try all kind of different techniques. Paints generally don't touch up well. The best way to do it when you're touching up is to paint corner to corner, or to be able to have a natural break point like a corner or above a door, and that will help you to be able to do that. If you have a sheen paint on the wall, you're not going to be able to touch up. It will look different because that sheen levels of the paint will change itself. Outside, you have to worry not only about sheen, but you have to worry about color fade itself. So it changes. So when you're touching up, again, corner to corner is usually your best way to be able to make your home or your building on the outside look as professional as possible itself. Stucco crack repairs, again, this is part of keeping water out. Make sure that the techniques and what they're doing, that these patches and these cracks are not only opened up if necessary, but at the same time patched so that water doesn't get inside the substrate, so you have no more issues with the water. And cracking like that is natural in the buildings because, again, the movement, I'm talking about buildings. With concrete, you get a lot of that itself. Mildew, it's the state flower of Florida, as I call it. It is everywhere and every place, outside and inside homes. As you can see, this poor guy here. I've had that situation in my own home. I think a lot of us have had as well. So, and it occurs everywhere. And it's something that we have to deal with. It's a health hazard. But then again, at the same time, the last thing we need to do is when we're painting is to paint over top of mildew. Don't ever paint on top of mildew. There's one particular brand of paint that goes out there saying that you can paint on top of mildew. Not a good idea, because that mildew mildew is just a plant, and it will continue to grow underneath any kind of a latex coating. And if you paint on top of mildew, it will come through that coating itself, and that coating itself and then you'll have mildew. I've had mildew painted. I had my door on my patio painted when I first got the house. I saw that it was painted over top they painted over top of mildew because you could see the mildew coming through. You could put bleach on the door that will help generally remove mildew. However, that mildew never went away because it was trapped underneath that coating. So in South Florida, we're going to have mildew issues all the time. The best way to control mildew is, first of all, as soon as you see it, clean it. Usually a bleach to water solution usually kills it, the plant itself, and it'll help sanitize the surface, and that's generally your best way to go about it. Will mildew ever go away? Not in South Florida. It's just part of what we deal with. That's why I call it the state flower of Florida. It's everywhere. Trees, everything. Just look outside and look at any tree, and it's loaded with mildew. So that's something that we have to deal with. And when you get a lot of breeze, it picks up the spores and just makes that spore travel all over the place. Blistering. When you see this kind of stuff, generally a lot of that is called if you paint on top of a chalk surface without using the right sealer, you'll get some blistering. A lot of times when I see bubbles, most of the time when you see bubbles like that, moisture is generally involved with it, some kind of moisture getting trapped behind the coating itself. So you have to be able to fix that. And the only way you can do that is by scraping and fixing those areas. Inner coat peeling. This is a phenomenon where a lot of people don't quite understand. Inner coat peeling is exactly what it says. Coats of paint applied on top of each other will sometimes peel in the middle and take everything off on top of it. So that's why I say when you take a peeling paint and you look on the back of the chip, if it's one color on one side, if it's a different color on the other side, that's an indication that another color paint, because the paint itself, if you're able to dry it and look both sides, they're exactly the same color. So if it's a different color, it's a good indication of it. Where I'm able to measure the thickness of the chips of paint itself, and I can tell you how many coats of paint are coming off like that. So surfactant leaching, we talked a little bit about that during the dew point problem, where you have kind of the walls look like it's got a shine to it. You really have to flush the areas with water. The best way to do it is just to let it wear, and it'll generally disappear. Blocking is just an issue where when you paint a door and a frame, and you close the door, and then you try to open it, and it sticks as you're opening it up itself. That's really the way to do that, is to just use a certain kind of paints that will not do that. There are block resistant paints that prevent that from doing it. This is one of the reasons why oil-based paints are not used a lot anymore. All oil-based paints will turn yellow. So if you're using a white with an oil-based paint, you will have an off-white door within a couple years. and then that's latex paints won't amber, but oil-based paints will. And then lapping, this is just poor application. Just where again, either this could be poor application, they're dry rolling it or dry brushing a roller, or there's too much air movement in the area where the coatings are starting to set up, not allowed to flow itself. Hat banding happens when somebody rolls a room and then cuts with a brush afterwards. You will see the difference in the texture itself, and it will sometimes appear like a color. So if you're seeing a painter who's going to paint the right way, they're going to be cutting in first and rolling into it afterwards, and that's how that a room should be painted. Sagging is essentially just by it's either too hot or they're putting the paint on too thick, and it will cause the paint to sag and so forth. And tannic acid bleeding, tannic staining is essentially on wood. Certain kinds of paints, but certain types of wood are more susceptible to moisture, and you will get that brown staining that come through paint itself. So it's something that we do with. Coming here to the end, we went through a lot of questions, a lot of stuff here. Trying not to be able to do everything on your own. Regardless of the supplier that you go with, ask the paint professionals, especially in properties and so forth. There's a lot of us out there wanting to be able to recommend to you the right thing. It's a relationship business, so you want to be able to use the right material to the right place so that you don't have to repeat over and over again the issues that you with. So, select a paint manufacturer. If you're doing a building, let the manufacturer come up with the specifications. In other words, the instructions that they're going to need to be able to paint that your building in each substrate the way that it's supposed to be, so that you have the best chance of that substrate lasting forever. Paint doesn't last forever. On the outside, you're going to have to repaint, every 8 to 10 years in South Florida. On the inside, it's about, if you're my wife, we'd like to change colors like every 3 or 4 years. So that it's just a lot of, you have to live with the same color. So it's just a matter, you're going to have to repaint over. So make sure you're using the right one. Make sure you're using a supplier that's going to help you, especially if you have a property or community. Make sure that's going to be able to help you with free, low-cost services. Let them be your partner. Let them help you in the paint business. They're not going to charge for it, and it's going to make you use the right paint the first time, last longer, and spend less money in the long run because you're doing it the right way the first time. So other than that, in conclusion, hey, there's all kinds of different kind of paints. In Benjamin Moore, we have 4,000 different SKUs for all the surfaces that we with. So there's a different paint for every different substrate, for every different price level, and for what you need. South Florida is a heck of an area to live. It's beautiful, but it's also very caustic on the paints that are being used. So make sure you're doing it right. Again, preparation, I should change that to 90% of the battle, because the more complaints I get, the higher I want to push that number. Preparation is everything itself. But if you understand all this about paint, now look at it. Now we started, and if you actually listen to me without falling asleep, because I do get a little bit boring, look what happens. Now you know all this about different type of paints, and now all of a sudden, you're a little bit more of a paint genius and know that what paints to use, what paints not to use, or at least know to ask the right question. And again, use the right paint manufacturer as your paint resource. That's a good person to have. Like you have an engineer or a painter, have your paint guy or paint gal to be able to help you out. And paint doesn't last forever, so be ready. And that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate the attendance. I guess we'll answer any questions now.
Yes, Rudy, that was awesome. Thank you for making us all paint geniuses on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have a few questions.
Okay.
So first one is how to address large water bubbles in the painted surface on concrete.
First thing you need to do is hire United. No, I'm not kidding. The first thing, if there's a bubble on the surface itself, that means there's water getting behind the substrate. So before you start fixing everything, you could scrape off the bubble and repatch it, but unless you identify where that water is coming in from, it's going to happen again. So that's the first thing that you really need to do, is to figure it out. And that in and of itself is a science, because water will not come in where logically water could travel inside a wall from all kinds of different places. I've seen water bubble up and end up being from one corner of the building all the way to the other side of the corner where it exited, because it just found the place where it traveled, and then it found an exit point, and that's where it caused the issue.
That's great. Thank you, Rudy. So really quick, obviously this webinar has been incredible. The CAMs are getting their CEU course, but I really value questions like this. And just to clarify for everyone on here today, is this something that if they had a question like this and the other ones that we're going to go through, would they be able to call you and say,
yes.
Hey, Rudy, I'm having an issue. I don't really know what I'm looking at.
Yep. Yeah. One of the things I like to do, I like to call it, paint forensics, PSI, or I guess what you call it. It's a PFI. It's, you know, paint fails. If there's a paint failure, there's a reason why that paint is failing. And the idea behind it is just to get down to why it's failing and not just fix it, but get down to why it's failing so that way you can fix it the right way, not just putting a Band-Aid on top of it. So call me at any time. That's what I'm here for.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, we have
Okay.
another question. All right, it says, we have a high-rise condo, we love those, with many outside railings. We
Yes.
must make a decision on electrostatic painting or roller and brush. Electro, much more expensive. Can we
Yes.
get by with the roller and brush?
Yes. Well, again, that really depends on, it's going to be depending on the level of what you want to do. Electrostatic painting is real nice. All electrostatic painting is a method of application of the paint. Okay. Generally, when you're using electrostatic painting, you're using an aliphatic urethane. It's generally a little bit better quality coating. So it's going to last a little bit longer. Preparation still needs to be the same. And generally, if you're going to spend the money on electrostatic coating, you want to spend the money on better preparation so you can get value out of that. Because if you use electrostatic paint on a poorly prepared surface, it's going to fail right away. Brushing and rolling, again, it's all about preparation. Generally, if you brush and roll, the quality of the coating is not going to be as good as the aliphatic urethane you're putting with electrostatic application. However, one of the advantages of brush and roll is that if you have maintenance people, it's a lot easier to brush and roll a railing if the paint fails in that area than getting a whole paint application, electrostatic sprayer. It's a specialized sprayer to repaint those areas. And aliphatic urethanes could only be put on by a spray machine, either a regular spray machine or an electrostatic sprayer.
Wow. Awesome. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, you are the person to know.
Thank you.
You are the genius to know. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that concludes our questions here in the Q&A. So this was wonderful. I definitely feel like a paint genius.
There you
Thank you
go.
for
There
your
you go.
time. I did notice in the chat box requests for slides. So I know that you'll be.
Yeah, if anybody wants a slide, Peggy's gonna put out my information, my cell phone number and everything in there. So send me an email, drop me a text, and I'll be more than happy. It's better for me to email you. I'll email you a PDF of the presentation itself. So that way you can have it. And if you need to get a hold of me for any particular reason, I live in Palm Beach County. I cover from pretty much Palm Beach County all the way to Vero Beach. If I'm out of your area, I do have a lot of colleagues that work with me that would be more than happy to work with you and kind of help you out and answer any and all questions that you have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rudy, and thank you, Peggy, so much. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to be able to moderate with you today.
Thank you, Siobhan. Appreciate that very much. Peggy, thank you again.
Okay. Alrighty, you're certainly welcome. I just want to close by announcing some more webinars that are coming. And thank you for today. Like she said, a lot of information. Guys, mark your calendars. Next Friday, November 14th, I have J.R. Fraser Reserve Studies coming in. Sundeep J is a reserve specialist. He is going to speak. It's a morning class, 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Again, a morning class. Most of my classes are from 12 to 1:30 or 2. On November 20th, I have Clarkson and Varick Elevator Consultants giving a class, 12 to 1:30 if you have an elevator, which most of you do. Be sure and listen in because you need a consultant when you need an elevator company to do service. On December the 4th, going into the new month, we have Socatech Engineering. They are going to be giving a class mainly on ownership of project management. So it'd be ownership reps. 12/9, I have Sherwin-Williams coming in. Let's see what they have a take on what Rudy just said today. On 12/16, a lot of you need this. You need this one course to comply with the state of Florida for your board certification. I have the 2025 legal update by Rosenbaum PLLC with a very experienced attorney speaking, Steve Brayton. Again, that's 12/16. Mark your calendars. That is from 12 to 2 p.m. And then I'm going to jump over a few weeks to January 29th. We have another reserve study coming in on reserve advisors. So they've already booked for the end of January from 12 to 2. So all this, you will be receiving flyers. Anybody that registered for today's course, not just attended, but anybody who registered. Like everyone's saying, we hope you enjoyed the class. I just want to say that we're coming into the season to be grateful, facing Thanksgiving Day at the end of the month. I want you all to know from me how grateful I truly am to those of you who have been supporting the webinars all year long, and your support is by attending and of course supporting by sponsoring, and you do mean a great deal to me. Final closing, I just want to say again, please allow your 1 to 2 weeks for the education credits to be posted to the DVPR by Benjamin Moore's team. And we hope to see you again soon, one of the upcoming webinars, and enjoy this gorgeous week. Thank you.